This video is kind of going to be my ending of my critique videos where I discuss different guns and their useful situation for emergencies and like the question, with the shit hits the fan gun, what would be a good idea? Well, this video is going to be more designed for someone who's not familiar with firearms, and it's going to be a suggestion on some of the basic firearms that I believe just about anybody should own. And again, this may piss some people off because in some areas, owning a handgun is restricted, and it's like New York State. To get a pistol license or a pistol permit, the amount of money you would have to spend in classes, this and that requirement and everything else, it costs you over $1,000 to get a permit to buy a $200 retail, item. So some places you got to work around it a little. And so this is going to be a generalized thing about firearms that just about are not restricted anywhere, hopefully. There probably is some restriction somewhere where they're outlawed. I know in New Jersey to own an air gun, you got to have a weapons permit. Okay? So let's start off. One thing, and the reason I'm bringing up air guns is I kind of miss them in the critique. But air guns in general, at least back when I bought them, there's no restrictions on them. You can order them, they can be delivered in the mail. You don't have to go through a dealer or background checks, I believe. I don't know anymore. And also, air guns, some like this 22 caliber Benjamin air rifle. Okay, somebody gave me a tin of 22 caliber pellets. There's got to be like 1,000 of them in there. All right. Ammunition isn't that expensive. You pump this thing up with air. This particular firearm is powerful enough to take small game. I've taken squirrels, rabbits, and stuff with it. My great uncle had 2 foxes raiding his chicken coop, and he dispatched them with this rifle. Okay, so, and you get a tin of pellets, lead pellets, even when they sell out of ammo, like I said, you got 1,000 rounds, all right? So there's some advantages, and also airgun technology has increased to where there's some pretty bizarre and fairly expensive items out there where you can charge this, a cylinder with like a compressed air tank, like scuba tanks, and you can charge a reservoir and fire like some of these things are 38, 40, even 50 caliber lead pellets that you can take. People go boar hunting with it or go out and shoot hogs with an air gun, which they're quite powerful. And I don't believe they're regulated, okay, like an actual cartridge firearm. So that's one thing you may look into. Plus the thing is, that's how we all learn to shoot. I learned to shoot with a little spring-loaded cock it once, fire at a can on the fence out in the backyard. That's how I learned to shoot a rifle when I was small. So that is an option, okay? And then again, looking into places where you have restrictions on firearms. So air gun's a good start. It's good to have one around. Survivalists, preppers, it's a good utility firearm to have. Okay, the next gun that you kind of should have is a shotgun, and a pump shotgun of good quality. Now I reviewed a lot of those Turkish pump guns. This is a Remington 870 that I have, but probably the Mossberg 500 or the Mossberg Maverick would be the best in terms of quality and the lowest on a budget. Okay, and why a 12 gauge shotgun? Well, with this short barrel on it, it is in defensive mode, 18-inch barrel. You can easily change the barrels out on these guns. It's a 30-inch target barrel. If I wanted to go hunting or duck hunting, I could use the gun. So defense mode, brush gun. This is a slug barrel for shooting deer in the brush. And you can get different barrels and swap out. So all you need is the one gun. And actually, you can buy them in a combo package. In other words, with a short barrel and with a long barrel for bird hunting. Okay. So you can have one item that'll work for defensive mode, hunting mode. You can take small game, big game with a shotgun, birds, small animals up to deer, and even with slugs, we'd hunt black bear with them up north. So that would be a good choice to have for versatility. And the reason I'd go with a Mossberg brand is because barrels are available, spare parts are available. If you get one of the more budget foreign ones, if something breaks or something, that's kind of why they come in at a low price point. There's no parts or repairs for those guns. So that would be kind of a must-have and a good option for just having a firearm around, okay? So you got it all, hunting, defense, the whole 9 yards. Now, when it comes to handguns, like I said, there are some places where getting a handgun would be almost impossible, okay? Or, it costs you so much, it's not practical. You could take one of these pump shotguns, a Mossberg or whatever, put a pistol grip on it, and have a convenient gun, still legal, with an 18-inch barrel for home defense. I knew a lot of people, that's the choice they made, a Mossberg Cruiser. And then again, if you're going that route to have a pistol grip shotgun, I would go with a smaller gauge, 20. Actually, a friend of mine bought a Mossberg Cruiser in 410 years ago. I had one 12 gauge. It was powerful, but could be hard to control. He had the little 410. He goes, you keep this in the house or apartment. You're not going to shoot through all the walls of your house with it. And it was a good thing as an alternative to where you can't own a pistol, or owning a pistol would cost you so much it's not advantageous. Okay. And I don't believe shotguns like this, a little pump hunting shotgun, are restricted just about anywhere. Okay, there's no bans, they're not illegal. Okay, so there's no detachable magazine. So something like this is kind of a must-have thing. Okay, and like I said, you can also use it as is in this 12 gauge or with a smaller gauge to replace a handgun for home defense. Next up, and just a general firearm most people should own, is a .22 long rifle, bolt action rifle or semi-auto or whatever you want. But just a general purpose .22 long rifle. And you can hunt with them. You can use them for home defense if you have to. And to learn how to shoot The ammunition is not that expensive as compared to other firearms. And again, kind of like the pellet gun, like I said, 50 rounds of 22 in a little cardboard box will fit in your shirt pocket. Okay, so it's kind of another gun. The shotgun, the 22, just about cover the basic needs that anybody has for any type of firearm. Okay, in general, for hunting, casual shooting, or whatever, that's the way to go. Now, at this point, I'm going to say having a shotgun, a 22 rifle, air gun, or something like that, that's going to cover your basic needs. And like I said, I'm directing this because I know there's a lot of places where people have some very restrictive laws when it comes to handgun or even handgun ammunition. Say you bought an old Marlin camp rifle, they were in 9mm or something, back in the 80s I remember them, and you have a carbine that shoots pistol ammo. Well, in New York State, if you go into a store to buy pistol ammo, they request, well, now you got to fill out a background check for any kind of ammo, but for them to sell you handgun ammo, you would have to show them your handgun license to prove that you legally own a handgun. And a guy that has a 9mm carbine, I mean, Ruger made something like a 1022 and 44 mag. I remember I had one of those carbines. It's not a handgun, but it does fire handgun ammo, or a lever gun, say in 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum or something. That can be a problem. Okay, I mean, it's some places it's quite ridiculous. So these are the basic firearms you should at least have. Now, when it comes, the next one we're going to look at is high-powered rifles. Okay. Now we're going to talk about rifles. These it's not a must-have, but with a lot of people, I know, like, they're left with some sort of a sporting rifle or something from father, grandfather, old military gun, or military gun that has been sporterized. They cut the stock down, maybe put a scope on it or something. You may end up inheriting something like this or find it in an attic or a closet. Because to spend a lot of money on a nice sporting rifle, if you don't hunt and never use it, so I ain't going to say that's a necessity. The shotgun kind of covers both of them there. But say you have one, get some ammo for it, clean it, check it out, shoot it a little bit, and it's nice to have. Now, a lot of people at this point in time would say, well, you got to have an AR-15. Okay, that's the gun that you got to have for self-defense or whatever, and that's why a lot of people own these guns. Plus, they're fun to shoot and everything else, but there are places where you cannot legally own them, or you have to have them. If you did own them at a certain point, like in New York, they must be registered with the state and all this other stuff. So another alternative, and again, we have the Winchester 94 lever action gun, a favorite of good old John Wayne westerns and all that other stuff. This was the most commonly owned firearm in the United States of America at one time. In 30-30, 32, there's a few other calibers they make, but the most common one would be in 30-30 Winchester. If you live in a place where it's restrictive, this would be the gun. And I think that's why lever action guns have made a comeback in recent years. They're not banned, they're not regulated, nobody's trying to confiscate old Winchester style rifles or lever action guns. And actually they've become quite expensive. Okay, these things used to be 200-300 units, not anymore. Anything like this, even kind of worn like this is, they go for 700 units now. And like I said, if you feel the need for a rifle, but you live in a place where it's restrictive, something like this would be the answer. Now, you can buy them in pistol calibers, but like I warned you, in some states with ammunition restrictions, you wouldn't be able to buy the ammo. Okay, so, because these are made, I had one in .357 Magnum, and no, I didn't. That was a hard one to get. I had one in .44 Magnum, a Winchester 94. I should have never sold it, but I wasn't using it much. But yes, they're a good gun. They hold their value. And the thing about them, it doesn't have a detachable magazine, but with this side-loading tube mag, it's like somebody said, you fire 2 rounds, you can stick 2 rounds back in the mag. So you have basically with this firearm an endless magazine. You don't have to pull it out and stick 2 cartridges in the magazine, put it back. You can load it if you have time through the side, and without a military style gun, this would probably be the next best thing in case of an emergency or civil unrest. Lightweight, fast acting, and if you practice with it, it's an accurate, fast shooting gun. And I think that's why they made a comeback, lever action guns, because of that. But most of those are in a pistol caliber, and like I said, you don't think about it, but there are places where that can be a problem. Okay? So, and everybody would say, well, you need a handgun. Okay? Just to say about handguns, because like I said in New York, I think my niece and her husband wanted to go and get their handgun permits, and the cost was unimaginable. Okay, I mean, they got you one way or the other. And there are I know there's some places that they tried just to ban ownership of handguns. There's 2 states that did that. Of course, Supreme Court went back and told them they couldn't do that. But still, it could be tricky. So I'm not going to carry on and tell you you should have this. But in terms of handguns, keep it simple. You don't have to get the most expensive thing out there, but a .38 caliber revolver. Some people feel more comfortable with a revolver, and of course any type of 9mm with a polymer frame. They're not that expensive as compared to other handguns. They're quite common and popular. Ammunition is popular and around. Something like that would be adequate for home defense or just personal defense. But the reason I'm not going to get into handguns is because, like I said, there's some people just can't do it, can't afford it, or don't want to go through the hassle of getting permits, licenses, and everything else for them. Sad thing to say. But that's about it for, a well-rounded thing. A shotgun, a .22 rifle, maybe some sort of a high-powered rifle. That's kind of a, But you should have some sort of shotgun and a .22, and like I said, even a pellet gun. If you live in the city and a .22 is something too powerful, a pellet gun can replace the .22 when it comes for pests in your yard or animals digging into your roof or something, or wrecking your house, and you want to get rid of the vermin, pellet gun. And that's about it, and then you can go on from there. But those would be, the must-haves, or a good reason to have it around, even if you really don't use it much or something. They're a tool, okay? You can't look at it like, oh, it's a weapon. Yeah, it's a weapon, but, they're a tool, And the way things are looking now, I'd say it's a good idea to have at least something in the house other than nothing. And back in the day, I remember when I was a kid, everybody hunted. Everybody had a shotgun in the house. The .22 rifle my brother's grandchildren are using I found that in a closet in my grandmother's house. There's a .30-30 Winchester, some bolt-action shotguns they got out of department stores, because that's all you needed to fire at a deer with a slug, and stuff like that. And everybody had firearms in the home. It was not uncommon at one point in time in this country. Unfortunately, that's different now. But alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the critiques videos. This video is kind of aimed at people that really don't know much about guns and that, or don't. If I don't know if there's anybody out there that doesn't own a firearm at this point in time, unless you weren't old enough to buy one a few years ago when the panic came. And I mean where they emptied gun stores out. So there's a lot of used guns too you can get a deal on. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned.